How can Pacific Islands nations enjoy energy security? How can they reduce their dependency on fossil fuels and develop their economies? How can all people on these islands get access to sustainable energy? To answer these key questions, the Secretariat of the Pacific Community and the European Union's African, Caribbean and Pacific Business Climate Facility commissioned a study that was presented at a forum in Fiji last August. The purpose of the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Trade and Investment Forum was to determine how to support private sector engagement in renewable energy and energy efficiency in Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands and Vanuatu.
And good morning. Let me extend to you greetings from the Director General of the Secretariat of the Pacific Community.
To assess what's at stake, energy balances and energy forecasts in Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands and Vanuatu were presented and specific recommendations made for each one. This will prove to be useful for governments and investors. These countries, amongst the poorest in the world, present a unique challenge for providing universal energy and energy security to all of their peoples. Creating the conditions for attracting private sector investment is equally challenging. The majority, 80%, of people in Melanesia live in rural areas, most of them in isolated and remote islands with little to no infrastructure. They live off subsistence farming and fishing and do not have access to energy. Consequently, they have limited access to enterprise, health, education and communication. For the EU's BizClim facility, a key issue is to reduce the country's high dependency on fuel imports, which is up to 95%, and improve access to energy and rural electrification. But there are many difficulties. There is a lack of policy, rules and codes to provide electricity from renewable sources. Funding from governments or donors is insufficient. Renewable projects are being deployed without making sure that recipients have the capacity or expertise to maintain them. Technical and managerial capacity in power utilities is weak. There is also a lack of capacity to plan, implement and support energy initiatives. Such factors seriously undermine investment confidence.
In the framework of the 9th and the 10th European Development Fund, energy efficiency and renewable energy represented one of our main areas of intervention in the Pacific. This was chosen as a focal sector by 7 countries in the region. And of course there was a component in the regional program as well. So far the European Union has contributed more than 65 million to both national and regional projects in this domain.
It is no secret that at the national level, energy security is a top priority in each of our Pacific Island countries and territories' development agenda. We have seen the adoption of national energy roadmaps, charts and renewable energy targets as a coordinated whole-of-sector approach of addressing the energy challenges of each respective country.
The study recommends evaluating the deployment of community-based renewable and waste energy service cooperatives, what are called WESCOs. They would use the 3 drivers of wastewater treatment, potable water treatment and biogas to electricity generation. Another proposal is that since Papua New Guinea has substantial reserves of liquid natural gas, an agreement between PNG and other Melanesian states to convert diesel-generated power to the use of liquid natural gas could be developed. Regional governments should also implement policies to apply renewable conversion obligations to underwrite a Pan-Pacific Green Infrastructure Fund dedicated to installing interconnections. The SPC, along with existing agencies and industry partners, should propose establishing a hydro and geothermal research unit as an international development and training facility.
Let me begin the keynote address by asking a few questions. You will most certainly concur with me that under normal business practices, a business entity that sells a product or a service would want its customers to buy as many as possible and would even go to the extent of providing discounts for large volume purchases due to the economies of scale advantages. But how often do you come across businesses that continuously ask their customers to buy less and less of their products or services? Leaders welcome the launching of the Pacific Petroleum Project in June 2009 and urged forum members to lend their support to the project to ensure its success while maintaining a whole of region position on such matters. Allow me to very briefly share with you some interesting information that I came across. I understand that 7 million people out of the region's 10 million still do not have access to national grid electricity. Is that true? The costs of electricity and petroleum in the region are amongst the highest in the world. Total energy losses in some power utilities are as high as 25%. Renewable energy opportunities and efficiency gains remain generally underutilized in the region. At this juncture, allow me to acknowledge with appreciation the support that the European Union, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, People's Republic of China, France, and other countries that have provided in the energy sector for the region.
There are many potential sources of renewable energy in the Pacific, and some pilot projects are being developed. Hydropower, solar and geothermal in particular show great promise. But the countries do not have appropriate legislation and regulation for renewable energy. Little has been done so far in terms of energy efficiency, and except in Vanuatu, private companies cannot invest in the energy sector. Yet some measures are being taken. Papua New Guinea is putting in place rules, policies and procedures to allow private companies to develop capacity. In Papua New Guinea, there is considerable renewable energy potential, including new hydro capacity, new solar capacity, new wind capacity, biomass and biogas capacity, and 59 megawatts of new geothermal development by 2020. In the Solomon Islands, the potential is more limited and includes 4 or 5 hydro schemes, some small off-grid hydro schemes, 1 geothermal scheme, multiple small off-grid solar schemes, plus 1 large urban solar project and off-grid biomass and biogas schemes, all by 2020. The Solomon Islands still have some way to go since there is no renewable energy policy today. The new policy will need to accommodate the Tina River Hydro project. Several important energy efficiency schemes are underway, such as Phase 2 of the Pacific Energy Efficiency Project, PEEP2, and an Appliance Labelling and Standards Initiative. They should bring important benefits such, but a formal energy efficiency policy is needed. In Vanuatu, there is some potential of new geothermal development, hydro, solar and biogas capacity development by 2020. Some energy efficiency programs are being promulgated.
And we were wondering how much donor finance in terms of grants in the Pacific went to renewable energy compared to efficiency. We went through 20 years worth of documents. We contacted colleagues in World Bank, ADB, Japanese aid, French and American agencies, etc. And we came up with somewhere between 92 and 95% of all the grant finance.
Forum participants agreed that there is no shortage of money for renewable energy and energy efficiency, but that there is a shortage of identifying viable projects. The barriers are financial viability and return on investments for the private sector, connectivity, maintenance and resources. Solutions include linking renewable energy with productivity to help address the return on investment issue and sustainability. Barriers to investment are numerous. Development banks lack expertise and it is difficult to get loans. And unless there is regulation enabling private investors to get a return on their investment, no project can be implemented. A cohesive framework must be developed to attract private investment funds. Questions such as financial viability, affordability, who will extend the grid, which standards are required, ongoing maintenance, conflicts between policy and agreements, and outdated regulation must be answered. Reliable data is lacking and implementation plans are needed.
We run the small power plant on Santo. About 80% of our power is hydro at this current time, and the rest is diesel. And the ADB is going to put in about 40 kilowatts of solar soon, we hope. And we'll be testing that and watching our grid integration problems and issues. But as a private utility, overcoming barriers to market entry, it comes down to ROI, ROE, ROA, return on investment, return on equity, return on assets. Assets could be capital, could be personnel assets, whatever.
To overcome barriers, energy efficiency and renewable energy must be considered jointly. Bank officers must be trained, regulation, policies and agreements must be updated, standards must be established. Also needed are training and information dissemination. Databases must also be assembled. Access to land in cooperation with local communities is also an issue that should be addressed, and lack of infrastructure, such as roads in many areas, is an obstacle to rural electrification.
Good news for the development banks to be given the idea that deployment of solar photovoltaic can be done without grants, but with loans from banks.
Financing institutions are playing an increasingly important role in promoting energy security in the region. The report proposes several options on finance, and among them, that new Pacific energy funds be created to reduce investment risks. Initiatives include establishing a minimum ratio for loans related to renewable energy. It was also proposed that the SPC lead a Melanesian island task force to promote a framework for sustainable energy throughout the region. It should be supported by the creation of a business unit that can work with stakeholders from industry and the investment community.
Energy security is one of Palau's primary concern, as it is with everyone. In 2010, our government endorsed and executed our national energy policy, in which it calls for the nation's energy balance of 20% renewable energy and 30% energy efficiency by year 2020.
Another recommendation is to harmonize water, sanitation and energy production. The residues from water sanitation can be turned into biogas. By integrating these different but related needs, the full potential of the island states could be unlocked. That way, realistic and meaningful opportunities for private and public sector investment could be created. The Energy for Waste proposal is an opportunity to underwrite the long-term funding of the projects and encourage competitive demand. The relationship between agriculture, health and education can be a powerful driver for selecting a particular renewable energy technology. This can act as a catalyst to cement or improve trading between buyers and sellers of resources. Projects in land management, natural resource planning, finance, energy and agriculture must be aligned so that the benefits of investing could be reaped. Disparate projects will produce disparate results and weaken investment confidence.
To achieve this aim, we have to do two things. One is to increase the use of renewable energy in power supply in Tuvalu, and secondly, improve energy efficiency. And in view of that, the Development Bank of Tuvalu and the Tuvalu Electricity Corporation, in collaboration with the Energy Department, they came up with an initiative to introduce a green scheme for home energy efficiency project.
And also, because Tonga is a small place, we have to try in time, and especially in other little island nations, is that we have to be independent in credit participation in the credit process. And to also build and maintain a diversified lending portfolio. We cannot focus everything and expose ourselves to risk by lending to only, say, a few.
The forum identified a number of issues that were called challenging but not daunting. Issues to be addressed include government interference with utility regulators, change of laws, lack of rule of law, pricing, changing environmental policy objectives such as CO2 policies, and retail competition, which includes how to connect renewable energy to the electricity grid. To plan a better system for return on investment, governments should commit to have competition in energy supply and establish an independent regulator. Governments should also avoid conflicting policies, develop national standards, and develop new policies and regulations to support private sector investment in the energy infrastructure and deployment of renewable energies. The private sector needs an environment in which entrepreneurs can fairly pursue business opportunities. Incentives for private investment should take a long-term view because 15 to 20 years are needed to make it worthwhile. Experts confirm that 3 to 5 year timelines for policy applications are simply too short. Forum participants agree that senior government officials have a responsibility to translate policy into implementation.
Both at your national level, with regard to your respective roles as regulators, policy makers and as regulators means that you're able to sort of touch on and actually are implementing these issues as you go forward. Again, I mean, leaders basically, I've gone back for the last 6 years, leaders have every year emphasised energy, renewable energy, energy efficiency. Most recently in their meeting in 2011, again, energy featured prominently in the leaders' communique.
To further encourage private sector investment in the energy sector, national governments should be doing more to promote energy security. Financially, their role includes jump-starting investment. This means introducing policies such as providing seed funding or guarantees for investments, offering tax breaks and import duty exemptions on renewable energy and energy efficiency components, and providing training. Creating subsidies and facilitating donor aid are also necessary.
Obviously, we're here to foster the growth in sustainable energy, being renewable energy and energy efficiency, throughout the Pacific. And as part of this, we want to develop quality training and best practices for the industry. We need quality in the industry for it to be sustainable.
In non-financial areas, the government's role is to extend the network, develop codes, establish standards for equipment and transport, as well as implementation and planning. An SPC-led Melanesian Island task force should be convened to implement and promote a framework for sustainable energy on a national and regional level throughout the tri-state region. Energy security targets expressed by local and international investors must be supported by clear guidelines on how to establish sustainable bioenergy and renewable energy projects. Member states should develop and harmonize guidelines reflecting their own particular circumstances and procedures. International experts would be invited to audit the operational aspects. Development of national and regional markets is also important to maximize the benefits from energy access. Legislation in the form of an Energy Security Act needs to be reviewed and updated to include biofuel, biogas, hydro and geothermal production. As governments adopt a harmonized approach to land use planning, licensing and delivery obligations, investors will gain confidence that Pacific countries are adopting long-range measures.
There was an economic dialogue earlier this year that was presented by the National Reserve Bank of Tonga, which showed that private remittances have fallen by 82 million Tongan pa'anga since 2008, which is obviously a significant factor and has had an effect on the Tongan economy.
Of lighting and appliances over the last few years, and the costs have come down significantly to the point where this is the low-hanging fruit. This is the easy one. This is the first thing that we should be doing. I must say, in my room here, I couldn't find one incandescent light fitting in my room, all LED and compact fluorescent, and I think that just shows the viability of it, because the Sheraton's obviously investing in these technologies.
This is about developing our economy, and so we talk about renewable energy, we talk about clean energy. It all makes sense. And obviously under an REDD policy and carbon trading, that's another sleeping giant for Papua New Guinea, really, with some of the largest and last stances of primary rainforest. These things make a lot of sense to us.
Before I go into the energy sector, because the previous presentations have been covering the overview and just short profiles of the country, I'll just speak on a little bit of the Samoa. Samoa, like Solomone said, small is good, and Samoa is very small, and considering we have a population of about 186,000 compared to 7 million in Papua New Guinea, that's very tiny. So fortunately we're small, and thus 98% of our population have access to electricity.
The Pacific family of nations, and more specifically Melanesian states, should consider developing innovation capital zones to host and incubate micro-enterprise solutions. A proposal should be developed for the building of enterprise incubation sites throughout the rural and coastal settlements of each state. These hubs would host an anchor tenant on alienated lands or government land and focus on development for new industry or adding value to existing enterprises. These proposed enterprise incubation units may also act as the host location for projects that would deploy a blended infrastructure for biogas, biofuel, biomass conversion. To increase efficiency and productivity, biogas and waste treatment and agri-fertilizer products output would be part of a combined cycle.
How can we create investment in renewable energy in the Pacific? We looked at economies of scale. Let's create 10 million consumers as one entity, rather than 13,000 people in the Cook Islands. And put the economy of scale together and let the investors come. The return of investment will be great from 10 million consumers rather than just 13,000 people in the Cook Islands.
To follow up, it was recommended that a Pacific Energy and Social Investment Symposium take place to turn these proposals into actions. The symposium will disseminate research on energy supply markets and provide analysis of the industrial, social and economic factors and how these may impact private investment in the energy sector. This should be part of the incubation process for energy security and also include consultation with projects developers and community leaders.
There are instrumentation that are available, but renewable energy is a new phenomenon that does not take priority.
We can safely say that the more fossil fuel we burn, we consume, the more fossil fuel we consume, equates to the more financial resources we spend. It sums up to the more damage we do to the environment, and it adds up to the more greenhouse gas we emit to the atmosphere.
The identification of land for biofuel crops and the building criteria for wastewater treatment and biogas facilities must be done according to international criteria. Agri-ecological land zoning is critical in the Pacific, where land and title disputes have postponed investments. Member states need to develop strategies to manage land, water and natural resources in a sustainable and integrated way. The water and energy delivery projects should be key to facilitate private sector investment in the delivery of energy security, health and communications to rural populations. It is also important that social inclusion and respect for traditions play a central role in energy delivery and security in Melanesia.
If there would be no other outcome of this 2 days event, the awareness and networking it has created, to me, has far outweighed the cost involved in putting this event together. At least you are aware of the innovative ways of promoting energy efficiency as Paradise Technologies and its brand name of A Better Tomorrow has presented. The Development Bank of Tuvalu would certainly benefit from the experiences of the Palau Development Bank. I wish you all a safe trip back to your loved ones, and God bless.
And like in Tonga, when we say a prayer, we start with a hymn. And I would like to read out the hymn, and it goes, Jesus, like him, olketa, olketa, olketa. And we've seen that one twice. Like him, Papa, like him, Mama, big pelasusa, lick brother. Like him, you, like him, me, like him, olketa.